120 kilometres that span along the beach. Make their way along the Opal Coast. Here's Christian Prudhomme, the director of the race. He'll be proud of what the race has achieved throughout the past 3 days. I'm sure he's relieved, however, that they've made it across to France and almost safely. That fall involving Andy Schleck yesterday, it was including with a spectator. Unfortunate for Andy Schleck, as what has been a disastrous few seasons looks like it's going to continue. Some speculating, though, that it may not continue. There have been a few comments on social media by a couple of leading journalists in cycling about the prospect of this maybe being the end of Andy Schleck as a rider at the Tour de France. We'll have to wait and see. We do wish him all the best with his recovery, and I hope that's not the case, because he has been one of the men throughout the last 5 years or so that's really entertained us at the Tour. Fabian Cancellara himself put out the statement this morning that it was amazing the support that we got on the English roads, but the dangers on the roads with people taking selfies was not good. On the golf courses here. Then Apindura. Can't help but wonder which one of the riders from that team will be in the breakaway today, as surely it will be one of them. Cofidis colours, Luis Angel Mate, the colours of the red team from Cofidis. Surely they'll get in the break today. They've been a little quiet by their standards. They've just been on the one breakaway so far. Normally they're in all of them, although they got in the breakaway on stage 2 and they did enough to take the lead in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. They've managed to get themselves a reasonable amount of exposure. A new team this year for Rui Costa. He's moved across to Lamprey. Originally it was just a one-year deal. He had that much confidence in himself and he figured I only need to sign a contract for 1 year. That was before he won the world title, so he'd be happy that he signed the one-year contract. He is now extended for a further 2 seasons with Lamprey. That was the hand of Thomas Voeckler coming to the front. That can mean only one thing. He's looking for the breakaway. If not, we're accustomed to seeing him towards the back of the race. Chance to observe the marshlands as they make their way out of La Touquet before the flag comes in to get the racing started. And here is kilometre 0. Just about ready to get underway for the first time on French soil in 2014. Stage 4 is ready to kick off. Like a conductor, Christian Prudhomme asking for calm. He won't have it for too long. They're through kilometre 0, so there might be a problem of some sort just a little bit further up the road, as Prudhomme has not taken the flag in and the race isn't quite underway. Unfortunately, I don't have any news for you as to exactly why this is happening. You just make the assumption that they're waiting for an all clear a little bit further up the road. There was a big blockage through the channel last night. There were long delays for those in the race organisation, teams, buses, etc., along with all the various broadcast vans trying to make it across the channel. And a lot of people had to make a quick rush down towards the ferry so they could actually get across and pick up a ticket. The flag is now in. We're underway for stage at number 4, and the attacks are on in earnest, looking to see who it is that gets in the day-long breakaway. Thomas Voeckler sitting in 3rd position, looking for his opportunity. It's Jerome Pinot who sits behind him. Cofidis is the team that start the action. Yellow jersey of Vincenzo Nibali. He'll be looking forward to getting tomorrow's stage under his belt. Breton Séché at the front. They've been so active throughout the past few stages. It was Jean-Marc Bidot that was in the day-long move yesterday with Jan Barter. Expect him to be feeling the effects of that today. And now it is Voeckler himself who is trying to get the breakaway to form. There he is, the former French national road champion. He's had long stints in the yellow jersey throughout his career. A shake of their head. He's not too happy with what's happening behind. And this could be the breakaway, as sitting towards the front end of the main peloton, Marcel Kittel in the red colours of Lotto Belisol is trying to control things. This is Luis Angel Mate from the Cofidis team, who has joined Thomas Voeckler. The Spaniard is well known for getting in early breakaways. And you can see the red colours there of Marcel Seberg sitting at the front. He's happy with two riders going away, as that makes it so much easier for the teams of the sprinters to control things. Neither of these guys are a threat to the general classification. So the Astana squad of the race leader, they won't be overly concerned. But it looks as if NetApp Enduro, they don't want to miss their opportunity to get into the break. So they're the next team to respond. It's still Voeckler at the front. Thomas Voeckler did win a stage not dissimilar to this one in around about 2009, I think it might have been. He got in a two-man breakaway with Ignatiev from the Katusha squad. And it looked as if they were going to be caught. It was surely a day for the sprinters. Ignatiev sat up with a few kilometres to go. Voeckler went on. He managed to win the stage. And it was Mark Cavendish who led the sprint home for second place. He does up the scripts regularly. This is Rodriguez, third in the Tour de France last year. And that will not be happening this year. He's already at 16 minutes and 52 seconds down. What's to come is yet to be seen. Fortunately, it wasn't high speed, but they all still hurt. Bernie Eisel is the other rider from Team Sky who's come back along with David Lopez Garcia. A reminder of how quickly things can change. And then there was the second fall off to the right. That fall with Izagirre was independent of the crash of Chris Froome. It looked as if he had a slipping of the gears, and that caused him to lose control of the bike, essentially, and he went down. That took Bauke Mollema with him. And it just goes to prove the old, well-worn cliche of you can't win the Tour on days like this, but you can lose it. We saw Chris Froome have a similar fall last year on the first stage in the neutral zone. They weren't going quite as quick. He didn't take off as much skin. It didn't have a long-term impact, clearly, given how comfortably he won the race in the end. But this could hurt him ahead of tomorrow's stage. Might make him just a little bit more nervous heading into the Pavé. And I wonder what the British fans are thinking now with the non-selection of Bradley Wiggins. It's a reminder of how quickly things can change. If Froome was to crash out and be out of the Tour altogether, then Team Sky are looking to try and pick up the scraps, whereas Bradley Wiggins would have been quite a good plan B. Jens Kerkele is the rider from the Orica Green Edge team who now gets on with the back wheel of Chris Froome. We now look to Belcom. They're trying to bring Bauke Mollema back to the race. This is Steven Kruijswijk, number 64 from this squad. One of a few teams looking for a new sponsor for 2015. And we were saying that about them at the beginning of 2013. Been a lot of activity in the United Kingdom over the last few days on social media, and I'm sure it is going into meltdown with that crash of Chris Froome. Plenty of support as well, I can well imagine, from in Africa for Chris Froome. Here's another look at it. There is nothing Chris Froome could have done about that. He is the innocent victim of a near miss that was a little bit in front of him, and he was the one that was taken out. I do hope he's okay. He looks okay in relative terms, but we said the same of Simon Gerrans after his crash on stage 1, that Gerrans clearly paid the price for it on stage 2 and is still paying the price for it. And tomorrow is a significant day. There's no mountains tomorrow, but it is a day where there'll be even more nervous tension in the race than what we've seen so far throughout the first 3 days of racing. And for Chris Froome, he might be just a little bit rattled. He won't show it. He rarely ever does. He's got the composure of a champion. If anybody can cope, it is Chris Froome. The rider from FDJ, that is Arnaud Geneson. He finds himself back in the convoy. Just testing the injuries now, Chris Froome, assessing the situation with his hand. And whilst this is happening at the back of the race with Chris Froome, 40 seconds is the advantage to the leading 2 riders off the front end of the main field. You can see the way the Lotto Belisol car is just gently closing the gaps within the convoy. The Sky team car is now firmly up behind them. And it's a reminder of how important it is to have a good position within the convoy of cars. Your team car is placed in the convoy based on the position of your best placed rider in the general classification. So with Chris Froome sitting in 5th place overall, the Sky team car was the 5th car in line in that convoy of cars for Bauke Molla, with Belkin 6th position. You can see the 6 on the back of the car. It's important to be as close as possible to the rear end of the main peloton. So if there is a problem like we've just seen with Froome and Mollema, the team car is quickly on hand to be able to assist. And that will be amplified tomorrow when they go across the cobblestones of Roubaix. Geneson and Goerkeler with the box seat to the drama that unfolds with Chris Froome, who sits on the wheel of Bernie Eisel, and it's the experienced Spaniard David Lopez who sits on the rear wheel of the Lotto Belisol car. A huge advantage to be sitting behind the team car, and you can see the way Lotto Belisol, that red car, they're not quickly accelerating across to close down the gap within the convoy. If there were no riders behind them, they would be quickly up onto the car that sits just in front of them. But because they've got Chris Froome, one of the big favourites, sitting behind, they're just gently closing that gap. And you can see the thumbs up from David Lopez, appreciating the gentleman's sportsmanship, courtesy of Lotto Belisol. Voeckler and Mate oblivious to the drama that's happening behind. 34 seconds their advantage. Here comes Kruijswijk and Mollema. At the pre-race press conferences on both Thursday and Friday, all the big team leaders were asked about being nervous ahead of stage 5. Well, the one rider that wasn't nervous about stage 5 in terms of guys who can finish in the top 10 was Bauke Mollema. He's one of the riders with top 10, top 5 aspirations, who sees tomorrow's stage as an opportunity to take some time on his rivals. Astana now controlling things at the front, waiting for the teams of the sprinters to eventually take over. It is Dries Devenins in the giant Shimano colours. The rider second in line for Astana is Alessandro Venotti, the Italian captain on the road, you would probably say, for Astana. So the Astana team and giant Shimano having the conversation as to who takes responsibility when. Almost there, but not quite yet. Looks like a new bike for Mollema. Can't see the frame number on that bike, which is a clear indication that he has had a bike change. They're just about returned to the main field, but they'll take that opportunity as they're almost in contact to get a quick assessment from the team car, make sure that everything is in place. So we return to the front of the race with Thomas Voeckler, the man who finished 4th in the Tour back in 2011. He's had 2 10-day stints in the yellow jersey throughout his career. The first one coming in 2004, the second one in 2011. Luis Angel Mate, the rider from Cofidis, who's managed to make the break today. Jens Voigt from Trek Factory Racing was in the first big breakaway of the race, and a popular one indeed. This fall, regardless of how insignificant it may be, will have some sort of an impact on Chris Froome. I use the word insignificant loosely because it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a broken bone and it could have been the end of the Tour for Froome. But that taking of the skin off, well, that's going to cause him to burn more calories overnight just with the recovery process. It might impact on his sleep a little bit, slowing the recovery down. We could also see on the stage like today, as he's a little uncomfortable on the bike, he rides slightly skew-if, which can have some knock-on effects with back problems, knee problems and the like. And we saw a fall similar to this in 2008 with Cadel Evans on around about stage 8, which I'm firmly of the belief was the difference between Evans being able to win or finish second behind Carlos Sastre. So the effects of this crash may not be felt for another week or 2 weeks for Chris Froome. The accumulated effect of the interrupted sleep and the body doing more than just recovering from the racing, but also recovering from the crash. No doubt we'll hear a lot more about this at the end of the stage. Chris Froome will be a man in demand at the end of the stage as everybody wants to ask the question. It's a simple one, and it's probably an annoying one. How do you feel? Well, how does he feel after that fall earlier on today? He has taken a fair bit of skin off. It looks as if there are no broken bones, which is the good news. But how much damage is done, only time will tell, and it might take a few days before it really reveals itself. The French flag's out in force today as Voeckler is aiming to lead over the top of the Côte de Campagnet. But Mate, who sits in second position, has got his teammate who leads this classification overall. Either way, neither of these two riders can assume the lead in the King of the Mountains classification today because there are simply not enough points up for grabs. And it looks as if Voeckler is happy to concede and they might just share the points, as we often see is the case at intermediate sprints with a breakaway group. Luis Angel Mate leading across the top of the Category 4 climb, so he collects 1 point in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. It's a classification that the Cofidis team have often targeted, particularly in the Volta de España. It was at the Tour of Spain last year, where it was one of the riders from Cofidis, Nicola Ede, who won the King of the Mountains jersey. And Ede has already got himself in contention here, sitting in 4th position, 2 points off the lead. And it's either 3 or 4 times that David Moncoutier with the French Cofidis team went out a winner of the King of the Mountains classification at the Tour of Spain. This team also won the King of the Mountains jersey at the Tour de France way back in 1998. So it's a jersey that fascinates them. At the 3 minutes and 18 seconds now, extending their lead ever so slightly up that climb.
It certainly is. Thomas Voeckler, born in Alsace, but actually he lived the early part of his life on the island of Martinique, and moved back and then eventually settled in the region, as you mentioned earlier, Phil, around the Vendée. And the reason he settled in Vendée was because he had this burning desire to be a professional cyclist. There for the peloton now, they make their way through the little hamlet of Saint-Pierre. There's no major pressure being applied, but just looking out of the finishing straight here, there is a lot of umbrellas starting to be put up. The rain is starting to come down a fraction. That's going to make it rather precarious on the run in towards the finish. Very slippery indeed in this really heavily built up area over the last 20 or 30 kilometers. We pretty much ride from 25 kilometers to go. Once we've left Armentières behind us, we're in built up area for nearly the whole of the rest of the stage. We're just looking down there at Team Sky. They've rallied around their man. He's number 4 in the line there, Chris Froome. Just behind him is Geraint Thomas. We can expect to see a lot coming from Geraint Thomas a little bit later on in this race. Last time the race went over the cobblestones, Geraint Thomas was in the breakaway, and he ended up grabbing himself the overall lead in the Best Young Rider competition. What I feel like, I've actually raced over the Mont Cassel, and there was a circuit racer many years ago in one of the stages of the 4 days of Dunkirk, and when you ride up that climb 4 or 5 times, then you know it feels like a mountain.
Yes, it's the 4 days of Dunkirk, they call it. It's actually 6 days long, but that's the way life is. As the riders come together again here now, and the gap is hovering on 2 minutes exactly. It's a little bit more, a little bit less. As the 2 riders are now through that feeding zone, the peloton are heading that way as they race into Rennes-Cure. And then we head out towards Cassel, which will take us through the 71 kilometer point. So we're just about 12 kilometers or 7 miles from that little climb in Cassel, or rather the sprint in Cassel, which is important.
There it is. I just keep looking around here. It's a very, very flat part of France now as we move inland away from the English Channel where we started in the early part of the afternoon, 2 o'clock. The riders having a late start today, I think, very much because it was a long day for them yesterday with a long ride down from Canterbury into the city of London. We're now heading into the town of Fort Rouge, which is the Red Fort. The department number is number 62, which is the Pas de Calais, which means no Calais, and I've never really quite figured that out, although it can be translated into footstep as well, if you like. With that descent was Arnaud Jonazon at the back end of the group. A little bit of regrouping here as once again Peter Sagan extends his lead in that competition. He's now got 132 points ahead of Brian Coquard, who now has 99. So Sagan building already a very serious advantage in that competition, a competition he'd like to win for year number 3. Arrière du peloton, the back end of the main field. These roads are magnificent training roads. I've ridden them many, many times when I used to live in the north of France. I lived about 40 kilometers away from here in the town of Lille throughout the majority of my professional career, and these roads were very much used as part of early season training. They're great roads, not too much traffic circulation on them, and the only difficulty once you move away from here is the open roads. There's not too many trees in the landscape once you move away from the Mont Cassel and head down towards the Mont Rouge.
Just take a look at this now. This is very definitely a move here. They've sensed they put some riders on the descent over those cobblestones in more than just a spot of bother, because Jeanson, for example, is still hanging on at the very tail. Look at the length of this line now as the pressure goes on here. Only 66 kilometers to go. It's not long by these riders' standards. The gap now rapidly coming inside 1 minute. This could have a very, very interesting last hour and a half of the race today.
Well, as I said, Phil, the riders who are used to riding the one-day classics up in the north of France and southern Belgium, or riders used to riding races like the 4 days of Dunkirk, they will know this section. It's actually a very grippy section. And I think, obviously, all of a sudden, BMC, which is a race team that knows how to ride these races in the north of France, they've seen this. You can see, in fact, the difference in the background there as you go over the Mont Cassel. You can see how wooded and forested it is. Now we're coming out into the wheat and barley fields, and that is why we've seen this change in the movement at the front end of the peloton. They're all concerned about the change in wind direction, and you can see the effect it's having at the back end of the peloton.
It's a split here. That's the main pack, but wait for it. There's a group being caught off there, taking it a little bit too easy down the cobble section. Pressure's gone on, wind's got between them, split the race away. This is a very, very interesting section of today's stage of the Tour now. 51 seconds the gap as the field chases them down. Well, 50 seconds is the gap, 49 as I speak. Cannondale have come to the front of the race now and have really turned the screw. Can't quite see it from this angle, but the peloton has split here, running away from Cassel.
What the question now is, who was paying attention when we came over to Mont Cassel? Who was riding towards the front end of the main field? And have any of the big contenders been caught out by that slight acceleration and the crosswinds?
Well, our camera's giving a good chance to check it out as we go down. It's no favourites in the race so far on the numbers there. But this is the situation now, and I think this is the turning point of the stage today. They're going to go chasing at 47 seconds, just on 40 miles to race to the finish.
Well, I did notice one pre-race favourite who seems to have been caught out in the crossfire there, number 151, the Frenchman Pierre Rolland. Now, he's coming away from Great Britain, having lost 1.5 minutes. Not too happy about that, because he was hoping for a high finish in the overall standings. 124, the guy who had a very difficult time coming away off the cobbles, Arnaud Journazon. He's at the back end of this group, so he's not in a very good position either.
Well, if they've caught out Pierre Rolland, he's going to be kicking himself, because that race up front is beginning to run away from him. This is the chase group here now. They've been caught because the wind got between them as they came away from the Cassel climb. And the Lotto boys are prepared to stir it on here. Marcel Kittel, a big man in the black and white, is right there as well. Peter Sagan is here. No mistakes by Contador or Nibali or Froome.
Well, you might...
Are gathering though. They're trying to also put their sprinters in position and get the teams organised. It's not just a giant for Kittel on the front. It's a giant rider at the moment here. Lotto are equally as interested for Greipel. Greipel, as we have to say, unlike for André, he's been pretty unimpressive so far in the Tour de France. His team has done their bit well, but he hasn't been able to finish it off for them. You know, the finish today is very narrow. I'm looking out at the finishing line from the commentary box, Paul, and I reckon 8 riders width is all this road is.
It's a very, very narrow road, and it's going to be quite tricky, because on the running towards the finish, we've got some wide boulevards, and it narrows down to, as you said, maybe 8 or 9 riders wide, then it stretches out again. I think the only way to have a safe approach to the finish is to have one big, strong team that make a long lead out at a high speed to stop any confusion coming into these corners, and I just hope it's a good, safe finish down towards the finish line. Well, the riders now, Phil, just to remember, are approaching Armentières now. If you've been, oh, there's a crash there, and I never saw that happen over on the right-hand side of the road.
Neither did the organisation. They just heard about it here, and that is rather sad, because that is Greg Henderson, the Kiwi, who's gone down. Now let's hope he's okay. Greg is a lead-out man, and that's he just lost traction on the bend. Well,
if you lose traction on a front wheel like that, at speeds like that, just as he was going into that corner, it's very difficult to control. So policeman there keeping that gentleman out of the road. 2 guys have gone down as well.
That's
2
Bart
riders.
de Klerk as well, who's gone down, I think.
Yes, it is Bart de Klerk. They were right at the front end of the main field. As I said, Phil, if you lose your front wheel, it's very, very difficult to control. Well, I was just about to talk about Armentières and crashes when that crash happened, because if you've been following professional cycling for a long time, there was a very dramatic crash just about here in the shadow of the belfry of Armentières. And if you remember, Jamaluddin Abdujabbarov went down when a policeman tried to get out into the road to take a photograph. Yes, 20 years ago they were still trying to take selfies. And Abdujabbarov went down and took out Laurent Jalabert in a very gruesome crash that stopped both riders, Tour de France's, on the spot.
Well, as you look at Buckler here, he's down to 23 seconds now. We'll update you on Greg Henderson when we can, as he was left sitting on the road there. Let's hope he gets up. 5 o'clock in the town of Armentières.
Yeah, just looking down at the belfry over the town hall there, originally built in the Middle Ages. Greg Henderson has got his hand in the air there, waving for some help and support. That was a very nasty crash. He went down at great speed, just lost control of the front end of his bike, front wheel, and he was trying to control it going around that corner, but he could not. 22 seconds. Around the town square now of Armentières, we've just gone under the shadows of the belfry and the town hall. There's a magnificent church in here as well in Armentières, known as the Church of Saint-Vaast, and it's got a big white tower on the top, which you can see for miles and miles around. 27 kilometers to go down to the finish, 21 seconds. That's about 400 meters the advantage. And again, Thomas Voeckler in the dark green jersey of Europcar, representing the region of the Vendée, which is pretty much the hometown of Jean-René Bernadotte, will not give up.
So as we move across Armentières now, we've left 3 Lotto riders back. Bart de Klerk and Henderson on the roadside, and let's hope that our cameras pick them up chasing back up to the field. But I didn't like the wagging of the finger by Greg Henderson to his team car there.
Certainly not, and again a little bit of a blow to Andre Greipel's chances, because to win the sprints in stages like the Tour, in races like the Tour de France, you need your lead-out man, and Greg Henderson was an integral part of Andre Greipel's attack over the last couple of kilometres. But this man, he may well take advantage of the chaos at the back end of the road. You see the way he goes round those corners there. It's as if he knows exactly what the corner is like going into it, but he doesn't. Most of these roads, he's probably never raced on in his life before.
It's come back to 19 seconds now, but returning 20 on the race. We'll give him the 1 second he needs it. There's a nice view of the presidential escort, the gendarmerie of the Tour de France here, warning the riders of the split in the road. Yellow, don't forget, in Europe is for danger.
Yep, well, let's not forget, Phil, these men are the elite, the presidential guard, and not only do they ride their big motor bicycles around France, they also have a horse department in the presidential guard as well, and they are the elite of the French police force. Do a great job, and they've worked extremely well with the British police over the last 3 days of racing. Now they're back in control in their own country, doing the job that they enjoy.
Champion of Canada, 21 seconds, 21 kilometers to go. The dancing, the muscled legs of Thomas Voeckler out front from 1 kilometer in to 163 today. He's just under 22 from the finish. The peloton are literally snapping at his bicycle wheels, and he will not give up.
Well, he won't give up, Phil, and you know you're not supposed to be partisan, but you know when you see the way this guy rides, when you see the courage that he musters up to stay off the front end of the bike race, you want him to win. You want to will him to get round this corner and the next one and hope that he's going to survive. Sadly, I don't think he will, because of the fact that you've got many riders in this group. That's Andre Greipel scuttling up to the front there in the white jersey and the German flag around the middle. His team a little decimated in one of the previous roundabouts just about 4 or 5 kilometers ago. Greg Henderson went down very hard indeed with Bart de Klerk, and that's all part of the lead-out train of Andre Greipel. Greipel is hopefully going to try and get himself together. There is the heart of Lille. That is a beautiful place down there as we look down right in the very center of this beautiful metropole of Lille. Town square right in the middle there is the Grand Place, the Place Général de Gaulle. It used to be called the Avenue de République, is the one that leads away. Over to the right-hand side, you have the Vieux Lille, which 20-odd years ago, when I used to live in this part of France, was very much derelict and run down. It's now been magnificently renovated. And just at the bottom of the screen there, one of the most famous newspapers of France as well has its home, the Voix du Nord, the third largest newspaper in France. Back with the race though, Thomas Voeckler, 18 seconds. And as you can see, I don't have to translate the distance there, because you can see just behind them the main field, just mustering, waiting to see whether or not they can pull this man, but he will survive up until the 20-kilometer banner.
There is the banner across the road, 20 kilometers to go. Greg Henderson, we saw crash, has abandoned the race with a knee injury. That in itself is significant for Andre Greipel in the closing kilometers to the line. And we're sorry to say that Greg has gone. But Thomas Voeckler is the man of the day, the most aggressive rider here, Paul. He's still keeping 16 seconds at 20k out.
Well, 20 kilometers at these speeds is going to take the race approximately 25 minutes. So every minute or so over the next part of the race, we'll see a second get wiped away from the advantage of Thomas Voeckler. He won't survive, but he won't give in. He's such a stubborn rider. He's going to push these guys right the way to the limit.
Of Saxo on the right, those lime green jerseys in the center. We've got the team I think it's Sven Tufte has come right up to the front now from the back of the race to look after the Orica Green Edge boys. Omega Pharma Quick Step, they're also moving in. They're still thinking Mark Renshaw's got one in him for the victory in the absence of Mark Cavendish. And there's the catch. The catch has come at just over 16 kilometres from the finish.
But as I said a little earlier, now what's going on here? Number 51, Peter Sagan, looks like he's had a slight mechanical problem here. He's at the back. He's onto the back of the race referee's car.
Interesting, a team off with him.
Now, well, he very often tries to freelance it a bit when he's got a problem to get himself back into the main field. Peter Sagan, leader of the green jersey points competition. He doesn't look like a man who's panicking. You know, this guy, 24 years of age, we very often refer to him as a rookie, but he's not a rookie anymore, Phil. He's been a professional for about 5 years, just 24 years of age. To me, he's a seasoned professional bike rider nowadays, but he's still only 24.
And he qualifies for the white jersey as the best young rider next year as well. But it's interesting that he's been left to do his own work here to rejoin, but he doesn't need anybody, does he? He's coming right back to the tail, but he's using valuable energy up here. Look, you wouldn't tell that by looking at his face. This man, as popular as he is, and looking at his jersey, he's been on the ground and we never saw him go, and he's coming back to the race now.
Well, he has, and you might be asking yourself the question at home, why have none of his teammates come back for him after the fact that they've looked after him throughout the whole of today's stage? But Peter Sagan is one of those guys. He likes to freelance it a little bit, if you like. He actually likes to use the convoy of cars on his own to leapfrog from car to car.
15 kilometres to go. Garmin Sharp, the American squad, are lining up on the left, and it's Tinkoff Saxo on the right from Denmark.
Yes, it is, and as I said, it's a question of what makes it that little bit more dangerous for the sprinters in this day and age, because all of the guys who want to win the race overall, you've got Andrew Talansky from the United States team over on the left-hand side, Garmin Sharp, Alberto Contador's team in the lime fluorescent yellow there on the right-hand side. They're trying to keep their leaders to the front end of the peloton, but that makes it complicated because, as I said, you've got 200 riders trying to occupy the space where only 25 can fit. And that's when elbows get locked, handlebars get locked, and it makes it very difficult indeed. You can see the rain. The rain has gone away now, but it's still left this moisture and this dampness on the road. Still hovering at the back. Every time we see the rear end of the main field is number 4, David Lopez. You can see the BMC riders wearing that yellow number on their back. Well, they actually won the team classification yesterday. It's actually Team Sky who are leading that competition overall. And that's why their leader, Chris Froome, is wearing the yellow number on his back. Hails from Miami in Florida, normally lives in Napa, California, Andrew Talansky, and he wears number 51 is Peter Sagan. He's going to have a hard ride to this main field now as we continue to ride around the outskirts of Lille. Lille, over the years, over the last 20, 25 years or so, it really has started to become a real centre of technology. The Euro technology pole there, as you can see, is an economic centre of excellence dedicated to ICT. Business Park brings together those involved in the world of research, education and economic IT.
They didn't win the day, but they caused an awful lot of disturbance in the peloton and showed us what they're capable of. The peloton, that the sprinters are having a job to organise this because of the constant change of direction.
But it's good because it keeps it nice and safe. I just saw a little bit of organisation, a line of dark green jerseys moving up the outside. That is Europcar. They'll be looking after Brian Kocher. But you can see Garmin Sharp. This is Johan van Sommer in first place. In second place, it's Sebastian Langeveld, the Dutch national champion. Also scrambling up to try and help Andrew Talansky is the Canadian national champion, Sven Tufte. They are all, Phil, trying to lead this out by making the pace nice and high like this at 5 kilometres to go. That's about 7 minutes of racing left. They're keeping it safe. They're preventing riders who might not be able to stay at the front end of the main field to come up there and take the risks that create these crashes in the final few moments.
We'll see how narrow the road is just here at this moment in time. The men in black there, the Omega Pharma Quick Step riders, Even without Mark Cavendish, still feel that they have the likely winner of the day, and that would be terrific if it were to be the case for Mark Renshaw. You don't often get your chance, but he's got his chance to lead this team in the sprints at the moment. Look at the face of Svein Truft here, the national champion of Canada. He rides for Orica Greenedge. Now the boys in black have swung to the right.
They've practiced this so many times in the early part of this season, at 5 kilometres to go.
5 kilometres to go, and the chain has been taken up. A perfect line astern there of Mark Cavendish's team, but without Mark Cavendish. Now it's down to Mark Renshaw.
Yeah, the thing is, Phil, they've done this manoeuvre. They've practiced it incessantly since the start of the year to try and be the lead-out train for Mark Cavendish. This is a very, very scary moment because these roads, they're just slightly damp, and to me that makes them more dangerous than if they're really full of water. But they did not slow down at all. That's serious organisation by Omega Pharma Quickstep. Now that Mark Cavendish has had to abandon the Tour de France because of that accident on day one, they've said, OK, Mark Renshaw, you are all the same one of the fastest sprinters in the world, so we're going to hand ourselves over to look after you. That's Alessandro Petacchi in third position, shouting out the orders.
Yes, and would be the lead-out man for Mark Renshaw. If that were to be the case, they're committed totally now, and 4 kilometres to go with these riders left. They have a chance here to maybe deliver Mark Renshaw in the right position. But lining up not too far away from them now are the black and white striped jerseys of the team of Marcel Kittel. We are at 4 kilometres to the finish. We get onto a fairly wide highway now as we come across the city into the area of Veeldask.
Well, I can see there just starting up into third position is Tony Martin. He's a big, powerful rider. I can see Kevin Retzer, the rider there from Europcar. He's looking after Brian Coquard. This kid, you know, he's a youngster on the block. He's making his breakthrough now, and he's rivaling Peter Sagan. He's rivaling Marcel Kittel. And there he is in second position behind his own teammate. You've got to hand it, though, to Omega Pharma Quickstep. They could have felt like a team that was decapitated once they'd lost their man, Mark Cavendish. But now all of a sudden, they found inspiration once again. That inspiration comes from Bathurst. It comes from Mark Renshaw.
And it's a famous motor racing town inland from Sydney in New South Wales. And Mark Renshaw has been one of the best sprinters in the world. Now, as he twitches around here, looking around, still it is Omega Pharma Quickstep, a team that has dominated one-day racing this year. And coming up now, we've got the Katusha team as well. They've got a fast finisher on that team. But that looks like a team time trial at the moment. One team taking the Tour de France into the last 2.5 kilometres.
40 years of age, the man on the front, Alessandro Petacchi, over 150 professional victories. Marcel Kittel moving up through the outside. Ale Jet, as we used to call him in years gone by, has now still got the inspiration to ride hard at the front of a line of riders like this to inspire his teammates. He swings off now, his job done for the afternoon, but have they still got the firepower?
Well,
it's 2 lineouts now challenging. On the right-hand side in the black and white, it's Giant Shimano. On the left-hand side, Omega Pharma Quickstep. You've got to battle for supremacy at this moment.
Well, I'll tell you what, he swung off and he looked straight into the eyes of his worst rivals there, Giant Shimano, because the third rider down was Marcel Kittel. And this is the highway I was referring to as they go under 2 kilometres to go. Tony Martin hits the front, currently the finest time trial rider in the world, as he digs really deep to keep the pressure on. And when he has a turn of speed, he actually cracks this team here. He is so fast.
Peter Sagan is a long way back, but look at him freelancing his way through the middle of that little gaggle of riders towards the front. Tony Martin, you know, it's almost like having a motorbike when he comes to the front, but Giant Shimano said, OK, right, a nice show of force, gentlemen, but we are the team who are going to try and deliver our men, Marcel Kittel, to the front to get himself win number 3 out of 4. Another one of those sweeping bends, but look at the average speed of 58 kilometres an hour. They don't even slow down too much coming around that corner. That's just about 40 miles an hour we're looking at. Everybody's getting very desperate. That's John Degenkolb who's moving up right now into second position.
Degenkolb, but he's the first reserve when it comes to winning sprints. They'll be looking for Marcel Kittel, his teammate, to bring them through. in the green jersey. We hit 1 kilometre to go. Sagan is a little bit too far back at the moment. He's going to have to do something special now.
He isn't, you know, he's right on the wheel of Marcel Kittel. He says to himself, you know, I can't beat Marcel Kittel in these sprints, so I'm going to use him as the man that I will follow in the sprints. Look at the way he's weaving past Andre Greipel there, through the gap. He's locked onto that wheel. Peter Sagan knows which wheel he wants to follow here. He's now up into 5th place. In 4th place, though, it's Marcel Kittel.
They're riding up to the line now. They take one look here. It looks as though Kittel is suffering a little bit here. Mark Renshaw is the rider in front of him. He's looked who's on his wheel, and the answer is it is Marcel Kittel. The Katusha boys, I think, have left themselves too long to go. Now it's forced here for Mark Renshaw to lead it out as they come up. Renshaw on the right. Here comes the man of the moment, Marcel Kittel, taking with him Peter Sagan and Brian Coquard and Arnaud Demore on the far left. Now they break for the line, and it looks like Marcel Kittel is going to get, oh my goodness me. For me, it's Kittel. It'll go to the photo.
Wow, that was an unbelievable. All of the sprinters were across the line in the middle of that road there. It is a narrow road, Phil, I have to say, but Marcel Kittel looks to me as if he got it in the right place at the right time. Look over there on the right-hand side, Alexander Kristoff, Peter Sagan. The lunge for the line goes between the French national champion, and it's one of those moments where nobody knows whether they've got the victory or not, which is now why there is no victory salute at this time. Let's have a look from the helicopter here. Look at the speed that Arnaud is. Oh, well, I think the picture tells it all there. It is Marcel.
Is in 2nd, and the French champion is in 3rd. Sagan will be 4th there. Brian Coquard just pushed out of it. He's not quite strong enough yet, the 22-year-old, but this is his first tour. He's mixing with the fastest finishers in the world. And Arnaud Demore on the left, champion of France. There we go, another angle.
Yeah, but look at that, the tactic of Peter Sagan. He knows he hasn't got the top-end speed of these other sprinters. He just followed. Did you see the way he followed Marcel Kittel through that line? He just holds on for 4th position there by half a wheel. But Marcel Kittel going to have to get his breath back now. So are we.
Well, just take a look at this. Kristoff on the right here. He really thought he'd won it. He's just a fraction too soon. His teammate swinging off to lead him a long run up to the finish. They made this very narrow road look quite wide, actually, as Kristoff comes to right on the line. Over the top comes Marcel Kittel. 4 days of the Tour de France, and he's won 3 of them now. He will not believe this. He won 4 stages in all last year.
Feels like today sits on its own, isolated within the Tour de France. A day of opportunity for some, and one filled with enormous obstacles for most. It's been intriguing overnight to look at the various tweets from the riders, and you can see the nerves coming through. One of the many more war memorials that we'll get the opportunity to see throughout the day. In the Acropolis Nationale Français, it has some 4,171 French soldiers buried in there. It spans across some 29 acres. The flag is in, kilometre 0. We've started. And we've started nervously. It's Tony Martin who was the first to move and try and warm up a little bit. The big German, buoyed perhaps by the 7-1 win last night. He's got another German, Markus Burkhardt, sitting on his wheel. Cyril Lemoine, the King of the Mountains leader. No climbs for him today. But, rightly so, staying at the front, trying to stay out of trouble. Easier said than done. These are the sort of roads that could suit the man in the white jersey with the red dots. He's not really a climber, Cyril Lemoine. He finished 4th early in his career in the 4 days of Dunkirk, which is a wet, miserable race, to be perfectly frank with you. Horrible conditions, not dissimilar to what we see today. So Cyril Lemoine might be enjoying the prospects of the weather conditions today. Early move coming now for the Garmin Sharp team. We've seen them aggressive throughout the race already. And the man that makes the move is Ben King. They've done plenty of work across the pavé, looking after the interests of Andrew Talansky. Astana now responding. That's Louis Wester, the big Dutchman, who's the first to come across to King. It was a nice moment at the World Championships in 2010, down a 23 road race. Ben King of the US, who we're seeing at the front of the race today, he was in a breakaway with Ben King of Australia. It was Ben King squared at the head of affairs. This is Samy Dumoulin now for AG2R Le Mondial. And good to see the NetApp Endura colours towards the front. That is Zach Dempster sitting in about 6th or 7th position. 27-year-old Australian on debut. Said he's been looking forward to today's stage. Samy Dumoulin, he won a stage and went into Nantes back in 2008. Back then he was riding for the Cofidis team. And it was a day where the breakaway survived. And if memory serves me correctly, it was on stage 5. Rui Costa, the world champion, he's already towards the front. So too is Sylvain Chavanel. Just spotted Chavanel, the multiple French national champion, both on the road and against the clock. 2010, when the race went across the pavé, it was Chavanel who was in yellow. Today, if you're looking for him, he'll be wearing the blue colours of the Swiss team, IM Cycling. Thomas Voeckler. Is he under pressure or with an early mechanical problem? He's making that look down towards the back wheel as if it's already a little spongy. For the riders who aren't accustomed to doing events like Roubaix or Flanders, their wheels will feel spongy because they'll have slightly less pressure in them. There'll be a broader wheel as well, well the tyre certainly will be at least, to try and reduce the chances of puncturing. So it does feel a little strange. Jens Voigt, Tony Martin, Simon Clark, Marcus Burkhardt. This is Rein Taramay now in the red colours of Cofidis. Some of the big names coming towards the front. It's no longer a day for the breakaways of the lesser men. Today is a day where we'll see some of the strong workhorses at the head of the race very early on.
Day of racing we have seen today as we head for the 4-kilometre marker, and we're now left with a 28-year-old who hasn't won a race this year yet, Lars Boom, but he was 6th in Paris-Roubaix 2 years ago, so we know he can master the bad roads, and he knows now he's got the chance of his life to win his first stage of the Tour de France.
And what a stage, an epic stage that people will talk about for many, many years to come. This has been one of the great stages. The yellow jersey is now trying to put time between himself and everybody else in this race. Behind him is a group containing Peter Sagan at 34 seconds. Talansky's group is 2 minutes 3 seconds behind, while Alberto Contador is 2.5 minutes back. But don't worry about all of those guys. This man, look at the way he's pedaling here. At this moment, Phil, he probably can't even feel the pain. His body is asking him to stop pushing it through this pressure at the moment, and he knows he's just got to keep going for just a couple more minutes. 3.6 kilometres to go. That's about 4.5 minutes left for the man at the front of this race, Lars Boom, to win a stage of the Tour de France.
Peter Sagan sat at the back there now, still in a good point scoring position to consolidate that green jersey competition. But they're saying 5 seconds to Nibali and Jakob Fuglsang, to the man up front. But now he's just gritting his teeth. He's in his 4th Tour de France. He's never finished higher than 105th in the Tour de France. And you remember when he abandoned on stage 13 in 2011. Unlucky for him then. But today on this atrocious stage, Lars Boom is going to ride to victory here, I think. 3 kilometres to go. Geraint Thomas bringing Richie Porte, guiding him off the last section. But this man is doing the ride of a life to try and put Richie Porte back into the seat vacated by Chris Froome.
Yeah, well, let's not forget, Phil, Richie Porte wasn't too far behind at the start today. He was 18th, just looking for 2 seconds, so that's why his teammate Geraint Thomas is trying to pull him away from everybody else. Every second counts, and it'll move Richie Porte a bit higher up in the overall standings. But this man, he's still looking to win the stage here this afternoon. He's got about 8 seconds advantage over the 2 chasers, but the way he's going, the risks that he will be prepared to take, he should come out as the winner of the stage.
3 kilometres to go, but this is for the group Peter Sagan here, as they've gone up. Ahead of them now is Bohm, ahead of them is Jakob Fuglsang. Fulsang is actually slowing a bit now. He's coaching at Nibali, the Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France, to hug his back wheel. He'll guide him to the finish. That's his job now, as this rider here, I think, is going to make it. 2.3 kilometers. Now, normally, when we get to the finishing line in Paris-Roubaix, you've 100 kilometers to go to the finish. But not today. The line is waiting at the entrance to the forest of Arenberg, and he's got just 2 kilometers to go. What an escape by Lars Boom.
2 kilometers corresponds to about 2.5 minutes of effort. That's all he's looking for. The man who's consolidating his lead in the overall standings, though, is in second and third position with his own teammate on the road. This is Andrew Talansky. He's actually trying to catch himself back up to Richie Porte and Geraint Thomas. He's seen the possibility. He knows it again. He can steal some time over Alberto Contador on a day like this.
At the moment, he's gaining around about 30 seconds on Alberto Contador, and that'll be a nice little buffer as we go down to the higher mountains of the Tour de France in about a week's time. These are the two riders that Talansky is trying to get across to, and if only he could get across, because I think he'd have some more firepower for those two riders. But this is the rider setting himself up for the win. Wise man, making sure that Nibali isn't coming back.
Well, when you think about this guy's pedigree, Phil, and you go back to being the national junior cyclocross champion, well, Alberto Contador, what's he doing here this afternoon?
Well, I think he's got his eye. He might be unhitching from his group here, because he's got a team car behind him. He has not enjoyed his day. That's the group. He's actually being dropped from the group at the moment as we come in sight now. It is 1 kilometer to go for Lars Boom, the Dutchman. This is going to go down as one of the greatest victories in a modern-day Tour de France. The roads are still swimming in water. He takes it carefully. He has all the skills of a cyclocross world champion. He's probably the only man in the race who has actually enjoyed these conditions today.
Yeah, but look at the time, Phil. We're looking at almost 100 miles in 3 hours and 17 minutes over the cobblestones of the north of France, and he still will not slow down. He won't slow down until he can raise his arms to the sky and cross as a victor of a monumental stage, a historic stage, I'd have to say. There's the thumbs up. He knows he's got it in the bag now. That sign, the yellow sign, will tell him just 500 meters to go. 30 or 40 seconds.
98 miles in an incredible time of 3 hours, 18 minutes for Lars Boom. The Dutchman is living the happiest moment of his cycling career, and he's been a world champion in the winter sport of cyclocross. And you'll be forgiven in thinking that this isn't the cyclocross race we are watching today. The 5th day of the Tour de France. The people have stood here soaking wet waiting. This is the ride of his life. It won't be a yellow jersey, but it'll be the best memory of his cycling career for Lars Boom. Punches the air, but what about the ride behind? Because coming up now is Vincenzo Nibali, the Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France. He's not a one-day classic rider. He is going to go to bed tonight the happiest man in the Tour de France, because he not only keeps his lead, but he increases it overall tonight, and it'll be increased ahead of his own teammate in front of him there. Jakob Fuglsang will be sitting second.
Well, Phil, that is quite a phenomenal performance by Team Astana of Vincenzo Nibali, champion of Italy and real champion of France this afternoon.
Fabian Cancellara, the favourite on many people's lips as well today. It didn't quite work out for him. But just look at the state of these riders as they come home. And that is Kekele, who's going to have a little dig for the sprint finish. He's going to take on Peter Sagan, who wants himself the green jersey points. Did anybody dare attack the green jersey at the Tour de France? Peter Sagan is coming at him, though, and he's going to get best of the rest from this group.
Well, Sagan once again wrapping up a number of points there. 5th place over the line for Fabian Cancellara. Louis Vestre, great job of work done by him.
I'll tell you, there isn't a man, this looks like Kwiatkowski comes up here, there isn't a man in this race that isn't so happy to see this stage behind them. It has been an incredible day. Looking here at the speckled, dirty polka dot jersey of the King of the Mountains, Cyril Lemon. Remember, the clock is the clue now. time, real time, being gained by Nibali as he now goes clear of the field in the Tour de France tonight. Great ride though by Cyril Lemon. Terrific.
Bit of bad luck for him as well then. Now let's have a look who's in this group. There's Mark Renshaw there in the black jersey of Omega Pharmaceuticals. I'm still looking for the big overall contenders. A little bit further back there. Well, looks like Richie Porte has ridden himself back up here. He's going to be next of the rest, and that, I think, would have to be a big thank you to Geraint Thomas.
There he comes, Richie Porte, and what's the line? We put 2 minutes 11 on the winner. He's about 2 minutes behind Nibali. There's the hero that got in there. Talansky's in the group just behind. He tried to catch up with the Sky Giro, didn't quite make it, but he's gained time, and Alberto Contador, and quite a little bit of time at the moment. There's Van Garderen in the centre with the red. He's also gained time over the favourite Alberto Contador. Just wondering who the favourite is now, though.
Well, there is Contador. Alejandro Valverde was in that group with TJ Van Garderen, but Alberto Contador has not enjoyed the cold of the northern part of France here this afternoon. He will have lost by the end of the day pretty close to 2.5 minutes over Vincenzo Nibali.
Heroes all as Contador crosses the line. Yes, he's lost probably 2 3/4 minutes today, and that's going to take some fighting back, even though the mountains on this race are yet to begin, and we have 5 mountain top finishes, so it may happen that they can fight back.
So let's just have a quick look at this confirmation there. Lars Boom, Fuglsang in second place and Nibali third. Who would have expected that at the start of the day? Peter Sagan in fourth place, Fabian Cancellara in fifth. Those are the mine shafts of the mine that was opened here back in 1899 by the Anzin Mining Company, and this man has been out there and mined himself a golden trophy for today's stage, as we see riders continuing to come in. The gaps are fairly huge here this afternoon. We are setting ourselves up for a serious race, but a moment of thought for poor old Chris Froome, who had to pull out of the race after 3 crashes in 24 hours. Confirmation there of the overall standings. Nibali leads the race now by 2 seconds ahead of his own teammate Jakob Fuglsang and 44 seconds ahead of Peter Sagan.
Earlier on this afternoon, when the racing got underway, similar weather conditions to what we saw yesterday. It was raining slightly at the start. It continues to rain here at the finish line. Hopefully, it's a little safer than what we saw yesterday. Official reports say that 41 riders crashed yesterday. Just one abandoned, sadly, the defending champion, Chris Froome. The shark of the straight, Vincenzo Nibali, no problems with his bike handling skills on yesterday's stage. Tony Galopin in the red colours of the Lotto Belisol team. They had a good day yesterday with Jürgen van den Broek, keeping himself well placed in the general classification. A man who has finished 4th overall twice in the past. Christian Prudhomme doing the honours, bringing the flag in at kilometre 0 to get the racing started. And it was Luis Angelnate, for the second time in this year's race, from the Cofidis team, who was the man to get things started. Quick response coming from Tom Leeser from the Balkan squad. He's managed to join him. Jerome Pinot from the IM Cycling squad has also managed to make it into the breakaway. And from the Breton Séché team, it is Arnaud Girard who rounds out the quartet of riders off the front. They're now down to roughly 136 kilometres left to race. The advantage for our leaders, 3 minutes and 9 seconds. None of the riders in this breakaway group former stage winners in the Tour de France, but they do have plenty of experience of getting into breakaways. You can see the flags in the background indicating that it is a little windy, not super windy, but it could cause a few problems towards the end of the stage. Jens Voigt was asked a question by the official website for the Tour de France before the stage as to what he expects, and with it being a slight tailwind throughout the stage, Jens is anticipating that it will be a quick day in the saddle. None of the riders in this breakaway group any threat at all in the general classification. Pinot in the blue colours, who currently sits at the front of this group, he's the best placed overall. He sits in 83rd position. He's 22 minutes and 9 seconds behind the yellow jersey. So he's of no concern to the Astana squad. Today, the big responsibility for the chase, not surprisingly, will rest with the teams of the sprinters, and in particular, one sprinter. It will rest on the shoulders of the teammates of Marcel Kittel, the rider from the Giant Shimano team, just about the unbackable favourite for today's stage. They started the stage today in Arras, which is an area of France that saw significant battles throughout the First World War. And for a 6-month period, there was a tremendous amount of work done by New Zealanders digging tunnels to go underneath at no man's land. It was a big part of a successful battle for the Allied forces that was fought out on the 9th of April 1917. This is Ji Qing now at the front, the only Chinese rider in the race, the first rider from China ever to start the Tour de France. Giant Shimano, the only team doing the chasing. There's Mark Renshaw in the black colours of Omega Pharma Quick-Step. He had the white jersey behind him, Mikhail Kwiatkowski. A bit of a change for Omega Pharma Quick-Step. If Mark Cavendish was still in the race, no doubt they would be at the front assisting with the chase. Incidentally, Kwiatkowski, he sits in 4th position overall. He's 50 seconds off the yellow jersey of Nibali. He's actually in 2nd place in the race for the Best Young Riders classification. But Peter Sagan, who's the leader of that classification, he wears the green jersey as leader of the points classification. And that, as always, takes precedence over the white jersey. What a day it was yesterday for Balkan. 51 kilometres per hour at the front of the race for the breakaway group of 4. So Jens was right. It is going to be a quick stage. Tom Leeser, it is in the break today. This is Girard from the Breton Séché team. Jerome Pinot, the most experienced from the breakaway group. And the man who started it all, Luis Angel Mate, the Lynx of Andalusia, a Spaniard on a French team, and in his 2nd breakaway of this year's tour. And the terrain that you can see in front of them now is pretty reflective of what to expect throughout the entire stage. Just the 2 Category 4 climbs, neither of them particularly long. In fact, one of them, the first one, is just 900 metres long. The second one is 1.5 kilometres. But if the wind does spring up and it becomes a crosswind, it could be the most telling factor of the stage. Here's Mark Renshaw in the black colours for Omega Pharma Quick-Step. He's now protecting the man in white, Mikhail Kwiatkowski. Alberto Contador with the thumbs up. He lost 2 minutes and 35 seconds yesterday to Vincenzo Nibali, which puts him at 2 minutes and 37 seconds down overall. Can Contador claw that time back? We saw at the Giro d'Italia this year that Nairo Quintana, at the conclusion of stage 15, was 2 minutes and 40 seconds down. And that was behind Rigoberto Uran, one of the big pre-race favourites. Yet Nairo Quintana, he managed to claw that time back, plus he took a whole lot more, and he won the race overall. Alberto Contador is a long way from being done with yet.
Quick step. Lotto Belisol, I know, have been to the finish previously to have a look at today's run-in, and they've said it's extremely important to have a lot of firepower to lead your team through towards the finishing line, because there are 9 traffic circles roundabouts on the run-in towards the finish, and you've got to control the front end of the main field, because with that nasty, tricky run into the finish, if you touch your brakes, you'll find yourself slipping back down through the main field. So it's going to be a battle for position when we think about those traffic circles, because that makes it very, very difficult. And that's why I think we're going to see Lotto Belisol trying to control the front end of the main field. Coming through 5 kilometres to go, you know, all the traffic circles are complicated. A couple of times the race is allowed to go around just one side, but then just before the final swing, the final Flamme Rouge, they call it, the red kite, as they come into the Boulevard de la Paix, which is a brilliant straight. There is a final corner as well at the Place Bastille. It's a good finish, though. It's an ideal sprinting finish. It's a final straight 1 kilometre, but it's that lead up, those traffic circles still leading up to that final kilometre, where you have to keep your place.
So this is Ji Cheng on the front here. Now we're inside 50 miles now, 79 kilometres left to go to the finish. We get to the sprint point at 75 kilometres to the finish. There'll be no action with the riders at the front. There's no reason for them to chase the points with the green jersey because they're nowhere near the top 10. Peter Sagan has 100. There's a crash here. We got the roads have got slippery. And down they all go. The champion of France is down on the left, Arnaud Démare. And one or two of these riders have been caught out here. I can just see down there too William Bonnet, another Frenchman. Here's the slide. It's his teammate trying to hang on, Thibaut Pinot, with his back wheel locked up with the French riders down. There's Bonnet 1-2-2. And just getting up is Démare. We've got a Cofidis rider on his back as well. Teammate taking a good look at him.
Well, you know, this is just one of those things. It looks as if there's a Sky Rider was involved in that accident as well there. But the big name is the French national champion in the red, white and blue jersey, Arnaud Démare. He was quite philosophical yesterday, Phil. He lost more than 20 minutes.
That's Heinrich Hausler down there. He's crashed again, Paul. He keeps on crashing. He crashed yesterday and the day before.
Well, you know, once you've had a couple of nasty crashes, I can see a blue helmet down there as well, and that's one of the riders from Team Sky. There's another crash being reported a little bit further up by Race Radio, so nervousness and fatigue, as I said, creeping in. That looks like David Lopez has gone down from Team Sky.
We're looking at the fall here, which has only just happened as the race continues on up front, and Nibali indicating what has gone on at the back. Well, there was a shunt. There's been a second crash now, as the cameras are picking up more riders on the floor here. And now we've got a rider from Talansky has gone down in the blue jersey, and also one of the BMC riders is down. Is Marcus Burkhardt, I think. This is Talansky here. But no, this isn't Talansky. This is Jack Bauer here straightening his bike out.
Well, amazing how these accidents. There's the Spanish national champion as well, is over on the right-hand side in that accident, the Jon Izagirre. But a lot of riders also from NetApp at the back end of the peloton involved in that accident. It looks extremely slippery there. There is Marcus Burkhardt. You can see in those lime green, lime fluorescent jerseys of Johan van Summeren as well, the big rider from Garmin Sharp. But again, this accident happening at the back end of the main field. Everyone has heard the accident, and I think the main field are going to slow down a fraction to find out just exactly what is going on.
Well, the NetApp are wiped out almost completely, all 9 riders in the first Tour de France. Marcus Burkhardt also left on the road. I think you're right. The peloton have sort of agreed it's time to ease back here. We saw Nibali talking to the riders. That was 2 crashes in very, very quick succession there, and Andy Talansky, 9th overall in the race, being caught out there. And there is some concern as to the Sky rider too, David Lopez, because he's still on the road as they get to 4 kilometres from the sprint, which is where Peter Sagan is going to start wanting to bring his team up to the front.
The best placed riders to go down in that crash, in fact, was the Frenchman Tony Galopin on the Lotto Belisol squad. Oh, yeah. Looks like it is, in fact, Zandia who's gone down.
Well, that's what they're saying. Xavier Zandio, Team Sky. It's got to be the same as Lopez. Just checking him out. This is the race doctors with him at the moment. Riders here decided to back off on the race, but there's still points just down the road in the green jersey, so they're going to have to liven up for that sprint. Peter Sagan, who has a lead of 50 points over Marcel Kittel in the sprint competition, and Kittel hasn't even been going for these mid-term sprints. He's only been winning stages at the end where you get maximum points.
See how those 2 series of crashes have created a bit of a decimation in the field. That's the front end of the peloton there, grouped together, huddled together against the elements. The riders involved in the crashes now scuttling up to try and get themselves back into the main field. But you know, just casting my mind back, Phil, as the leading group of 4 about 1,000 metres away from the intermediate sprint point at Pinon, you get years like this where in the past professional bike riders have dubbed a year of the crash. And I wonder if this year is going to be one of those years, because we've seen so many accidents since the start of this event.
Racing up to the sprint point, which is in Pinon. Comes in at 75 kilometres to go, so they're virtually on the line here as they race inside this last kilometre. We don't expect to see a sprint from them. They might just get on with pacemaking because they're not in the green jersey points competition, really. It's again the race from behind which will be more interesting, but whether they reorganise themselves, the big head of that peloton is trying to go slow to let the back group catch up, and there's still riders way behind those riders being tended to by the doctors.
Yes, but because of those crashes, normally you would see the gap explode and start to stretch outwards. It's still locked in at 2.5 minutes, so they're not slowing down too much in the main field behind. As you can see, Thomas Laser on the front in the Belkin jersey, the lime green jersey. I don't think he'll get too much of a challenge here as he comes up to pick up €1,500 or just about $2,000 first prize. More importantly, for the riders behind in sprinting for 5th place, they're thinking more about the points available for the green jersey points competition.
Tom Laser takes them through, and now it's the Cannondale team of Peter Sagan who's now lining up their man, hopefully. He's in the green jersey, number 3 in the line. But there's again a crash, and that was reasonably dry roads. There is a skim of water on the roads now, but again, a perfect pavement, and I've got to put it down to bad riding.
Well, I think it's just nervousness, Phil, after the crash yesterday, and also after 4 or 5 days, fatigue starts to slip in. And because there've been so many crashes, the slightest noise and a squeal of the brakes a little bit further up the main field, guys will start to apply their brakes maybe too soon and too violently, and that can create these accidents.
Well, Peter Sagan has come right up to the front with all the confidence. Marcel Kittel's black and white boys are behind him. Now, will Kittel continue to challenge, because he doesn't normally bother with these sprints, and yet he's number 2 in the competition, 50 points behind Peter Sagan. There's 20 points here on the line, and that's why Mr. Consistent, Peter Sagan, has won this competition for the past 2 years. They're now racing, remember, for 5th place, which is only 11 points. But even so, with a 50-point advantage, the other boys need to fight back. So it's right down to the first 15 riders to cross the line. And here comes the start of the lead out, and Peter Sagan follows the wheel through of his teammates. Greipel is thinking of moving up on the left of our picture. In a white jersey, but no sign again. Kittel is just not bothering again.
No, well, Kittel is not. We're just getting race radio information. Zandier and Silin, the rider from Team Katusha, have also been forced to abandon because of their injuries at that accident. Race radio just crackling through. Peter Sagan not getting too much of a challenge here, but it is interesting to note that's Mark Renshaw in 2nd place, Alessandro Patacchi in 4th, and Andre Greipel is in 3rd place, just keeping a close eye on affairs.
So they've just gone through. I was trying to see who the rider was there, but it looks like it was Jan Bakelants who took them over the line. That didn't look like Jan Bakelants to me, but for some reason he got involved in the sprinting. One would have expected it to be Mark Renshaw. Let's have a look now. That's Mark Renshaw. So he's gone through and taken them across the line.
Yeah, and that's Andre Greipel right up behind him, just stretching out his legs. He hasn't had a lot of luck in the early sprints, and I think he will be looking to consolidate his position as one of the most successful riders on the international circuit this year, 12 victories to his credit. I think he just wants to keep chipping away there, keep himself, get himself a few points here and there, because who knows, as we get again confirmation of the abandon of another rider. There is the crash. I heard it on race radio. Igor Silin of Team Katusha. He's also now been forced to abandon.
Wow.
Leading group of 4 though, Phil, they haven't stretched out their advantage. In fact, they've lost quite a bit of time. They're now down to 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
I saw Igor Silin get up and walk around holding his head, and normally race doctors will not allow riders to continue if they have hurt their head in a crash, because that's a precautionary measure. So let's hope that's all it is. But 2 riders out in that crash there. Zandio from Sky, whose bad luck continues in his tour, and now Igor Silin as well for Katusha, the Russian team. And has found the surgery. It's still open, and it's open for business.
Yeah, a lot of people have written in and asked about the doctor. Well, the doctor is Dr. Florence Pommery. She's a French doctor. She's actually been on the Tour de France for a couple of years, and in recent years, in the last 2 years, she's been promoted to Doctor Number 1 out on the course. She does a phenomenal job looking after these riders. She has to make some pretty fast calls as well. As you mentioned earlier, Phil, if a guy falls and actually falls on his head, she's the one who's actually got to make a snap decision as to whether or not to stop a rider from continuing if she feels there may well be a concussion.
Well, I wonder if she's any relation to the owners of the Chateau Pommery, which is 500 metres from the finishing line here. I think they're champagne makers, because if she is, I must make friends with her.
Not a bad idea.
Still overcast, but so far dry at the finish, and there's the peloton. They are beginning to get a move on now. This is a group coming back from the earlier crash, still making their way through. Peter Sagan remembers at the doctor's car. These boys are nearly back, but this this race has suddenly switched here, Paul, now, and there's a lot of pressure going on. And remember that we are dedicating the stage today in memory of the 13 million people who died in the 1914-1918 war.
That monument there is one of the national monuments of Capouillot, and it was put up there in 1933. There's another big crash. We're actually now getting onto the Chemin des Dames. As we're hearing over race radio, there is another crash at the back end of the main field. That monument, just by the way, quickly, was a tribute to the 12,000 runners who were killed in the First World War.
Well, this is the area where our cameras were poised to pick up Francois Hollande getting into the race director's car, but suddenly the race is now very much under pressure here, split into bunches as well. I think there might be a slight change of wind direction.
Well,
there's the crash, Paul.
Yeah, there's the crash. The victims at the back here. Another rider, that's Taramé. He's not had a great tour this year. A man who in the past has been regarded as a possible challenger for the overall classification. You're right, Phil. I think it's a question of a little bit of change of direction, lots of nervousness. And it sounds like the race radio announcing another crash, and they're in fact saying that the French national champion again has gone down.
One of Contador's teammates, Contador there, is a little bit stunned. Sits on the side of the road here. There's the doctor just pulling up to have a look at him. Well, this is amazing. These crashes on these roads should not be happening, quite honestly. Yesterday, yes, I think they had a reasonable excuse on the glacier roads and the Copperton, and not on a straight highway like this.
Well, it's all as I said, Phil, I think probably because of the fact that we've had so many crashes over the last couple of days, whenever any rider hears a squealing of the brakes, they're actually braking themselves maybe a little bit more violently because they're trying to preempt the fact that there's going to be a crash in front of them. What that does is it creates a domino effect, a ricochet effect all the way down the main field, and the crash happens because of some strange noises.
It's also the crosswinds which is causing the problems here, and the riders trying to dive for shelter on the right side, the lee side of the riders, and they're touching wheels.
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is once you start to get a few crosswinds, it's not a surprise at all to see Omega Pharma Quick-Step come up to the front end of the main field. This is one of the teams who are experts when it comes to riding in the crosswinds, and they've seen this as an opportunity. But you know, I can just see trying to get some food down his throat there is Alberto Contador. He is always attentive. He's riding near the front. His teammates are up alongside him, currently trying to defend his position in the main field. Well, there's a lot of chaos going on at the back, as if I listen to the race radio chatter going on.
The word is going out now to stop all the cars behind the brake, as they've come down to just a handful of seconds. We should be able to see them up the road now as we get into the distance there. It's barely a minute the gap now. They haven't been chasing the brakes so much, it's just dodging crashes, and this front group is now beginning to motor. It was predicted, by the way, by the French team manager Française des Jeux, Marc Madiot, that this is where the race would be in difficulty today with the crosswinds, and he's been proven absolutely right. 64 kilometres to go, and the pressure has come across the field. The biggest enemy of any bicycle rider is the crosswinds. It's the wind that gets in amongst the riders and gets the weak ones out of the back.
Well, you have to ask the question if the president of France, Francois Hollande, knew exactly what he was doing, because he decided to come in at 65 kilometres to go, and that's almost the moment that the crosswinds happen, and almost the moment when the excitement happened at the front end of the main field. And it's not going to be following a ceremonial procession here down into the heart of Reims, because the race is on once again.
I just hope that the race referee's car, I'm sure he'll be in the car of the race director, Christian Prudhomme, was able to stop and pick him up here in the chaos that ensued. We've had at least 3 crashes. A number of riders have been down. The peloton is reuniting at the front, but the pressure is very much on now. Those riders in trouble at the back. The Chemin des Dames, which is the area here, which was very, very famous in World War I. And there was the Cave of the Dragon here. The Caverne du Dragon was where the French soldiers hid from the advancing Germans, and that's why François Hollande chose today to board the race at this point.
Well, there's a little bit of calm. I'll just tell you why it's called the Chemin des Dames. In fact, it was nicknamed the Chemin des Dames going back to the 18th century, because the daughters of Louis XV used to use this road, which in those days was just a cart road, to take the two daughters, Adelaide and Victoire, down to Paris. It was fortified a little bit further in by Napoleon in 1814, but it became the home of three great battles in World War I. Ji Cheng on the front for China and for Giant Shimano, but you can see now just over there, that's Marcel Seberg, the big tall rider, trying to take on board a little bit of energy. You tend to use a lot more energy when it comes to these stages as well, because the cold means you have to take in a few more calories. On a day like today, we're looking at an average use of probably 6,000 to 7,000 calories on the day, which is why it's so much more important just to keep eating little and often.
Yes, but the trouble is, Paul, you and I keep eating little and often, and we don't seem to get the thinner like these guys.
The problem is you're supposed to ride something like an average of 200 to 250 kilometers a day to keep your body fat down to between 3 and 7%.
I thought there'd be a catch. Well, the cooling of the air, or the heating of the ground, whichever way around it works, is causing this little mist here at the moment. 51 seconds the gap. We're going through beautiful countryside, wide open and exposed countryside now, because we are heading into the department of the Marne for the last 30 miles of racing, 50 kilometers of the day.
He's a serious man when it comes to riding high in the overall standings. He's been, if you like, the understudy to Bradley Wiggins, then to Chris Froome. He's a very good mate of Chris Froome's, and he would certainly like to inherit the mantle of leadership.
That's 20 kilometers to go now. The peloton they're reeling the fish in now. They've been in the lead for 174 kilometers, these four riders. In fact, I only see three. Oh no, there are four. They're still there as they come under that 20 kilometer banner. Interesting formations now as the riders' teams are getting themselves in order.
You just saw a hand coming off the handlebars there. That was from Tony Martin to Michael Rogers, saying, look, mate, you're trying to look after your leader here this afternoon. We're trying to win the stage. Can you give me a bit of space to come through? Which is why Tony Martin is moving forward. That's what it looks like when you're a group that's been shelled off the back of the main field. It doesn't look like very far when you see it from that angle, but I can tell you, Phil, from experience, when you're on the rivet on the front end of your saddle here, flying along, you cannot close that gap down at all.
Well, Tony Martin, as shattered as he clearly is on the left of our picture, is still working hard here, the time trial champion of Germany and the former time trial champion of the world. But take a look at the face of the maillot jaune there, Vincenzo Nibali. This man is relishing this race.
He certainly is. He's got to be happy about his performance yesterday. He's got to feel confident about the way he handled those cobbles. But you know, that wasn't by chance. He came up to the northern part of France in April of this year and rode those cobblestones with one of the best men in the world when he was racing, Peter van Petegem, to learn the technique of riding the cobblestones. And that preparation, once again, has paid out.
5 kilometers to go for a split peloton now in the Tour de France. A dramatic chase by a huge group behind. They've caught out a lot of riders, including the majority of the Sky team, but not, I hasten to add, Geraint Thomas or Richie Porte. They're still in the main group at the front, which is being driven by Omega Pharma Quickstop. And right now, I can only imagine Mark Cavendish at home just wishing he was right there with his team, because they're taking Mark Renshaw now towards the finish in Reims. This is the second group here.
Well, let's not forget, Phil, Mark Cavendish had surgery yesterday, and as soon as he came out of surgery, one of the first things he asked for was the television remote control, so he could watch yesterday's stage over those cobblestones. Quite a historic stage as well, and I'm sure he'll be yelling on his teammates here this afternoon. You've got to be attentive coming into town. I told you a little earlier, Phil, about the 8 traffic circles coming into town. Well, that's one of them now, and you've got to be very, very careful. You've got to take risks. You've got to ride at the front, and make sure you pay attention as we hit 4 kilometers to go.
I must say those traffic circles looked a lot bigger on the maps the riders all get as they continue through. Now, don't forget that in this front group, the white jersey working with these riders in black is on the same team. He's just wearing the young riders' colours at Michael Kwiatkowski and has been working exceptionally hard. Now we know why TJ Van Garderen, Vincenzo Nibali and also Alberto Contador stayed near the front, because they knew the wind would be a problem in the last 8 kilometres of the day.
Well, this is another rider a little bit further back. That was Danny Pate. This is the second group on the road, and this is a group that's going to lose itself quite possibly as much as 1 minute before we get down towards the finish line. That's why the guys who want to win this bike race overall are trying to fight to stay near the front of the race, because they know on a day like today, without even thinking about it, they could lose 25, 30 seconds, even as much as a minute. There's the rider in the white jersey you were talking about just a few moments ago. A serious talent for the future. He won the Tour of the Algarve in the early part of the season. He knows how to ride for himself, to ride for his own personal ambitions, but he's also able to turn it around and become a team player, which is important in a squad.
As we hit 3 kilometres to go, the team that's led all day in the chase, the black and white stripes of Giant Shimano, are no longer here. And Marcel Kittel knows now he's on his own. It's going to be a very difficult stage for Kittel to take now. There is a lot of people have got a lot of interest in winning this stage, and the high speed is breaking up the rhythm of the sprinter.
The red and white jerseys are Team Katusha. That's the Russian squad. They're looking after their sprinter, and that is Alexander Kristoff. But watch out for the riders in the black jerseys over to the left-hand side, because they've got the youngest rider in the race, Danny Van Poppel, and he'll be looking to try and get a victory. Simon Gerrans, he's struggling, Phil, but that's not surprising because he was involved in that nasty crash on day 1.
Tailed off by the sheer speed of the run into town now as we're coursing through the streets of Reims. Still got 2.5 kilometres to go now. Peter Sagan is up here. He's the green jersey, the dark green jersey, way back in the centre of the pack. 2 kilometres to go. Omega Pharma Quick-Step have dictated. They've blown away Giant Shimano. But can they still get Mark Renshaw to finish off the victory for them?
Well, Kwiatkowski now in the white jersey. He's up into 3rd position. Again, he's not riding for himself here this afternoon. Despite being in 4th place in the overall standing, he's thinking about his teammates and his mates who are right behind him. He wants to keep the pressure high. If you keep the pace nice and high like this, riders can't catch up from behind. They can't come up and swamp you and make the sprint rather confusing. Nice to see Brian Coquard, the new Frenchman, on the block right in the middle, but so too is Peter Sagan in the darker green jersey of Team Cannondale. But the white jersey there is too of the man with the German bands around the middle, Andre Greipel.
What an incredible Tour de France I think we're in for this year. This was to be a stage for the sprinter. It was to be the day 190 riders fought it out. But just as we come here, Kwiatkowski has decided at 1 kilometre to go for it, and he's going to have to stretch the riders now, because that is an incredibly intelligent move. He is obviously extremely strong. Omega Pharma Quick-Step is shut down now. Katusha desperately trying to make amends here. Kristoff is coming through in second wheel, but where is Marcel Kittel? He's being brought, but they've gone now. They've all been lost. The Giant Shimano boys have been ridden out of this race by sheer speed and is stealing this stage with an incredible show of speed now as Kwiatkowski holds them off. Kristoff trying to be brought up, but look at their faces. They have got no more speed in those legs, and this is going to be a victory now for Michael. Oh, is it? Retzer is bringing them up. Last desperate throws as Retzer himself. Kevin Retzer is coming through. Renshaw is on Retzer's wheel, and on the right is Greipel. Andre Greipel is broken for the line. Renshaw has got the tail of him now. Kristoff is in 3rd, but Andre Greipel has just done the ride of his life. What an incredible sprint, Paul.
Well, that was amazing, but everybody had to bide their time. The man who nearly created the surprise, Phil, was Kwiatkowski. He was actually trying to lead out his teammates there. He had so much power, he rode away from everybody else. This is a second group coming forward here, but I wonder what happened to Marcel Kittel.
I can tell you what happened, Paul. He punctured, and so too did Danny Van Poppel, 2 young sprinters at the most crucial stage, leaving a wide open sprint.
That is tough to happen on the run in towards the finish place. these are time gaps that we're looking at here this afternoon, Phil. I have to say that that's not so important. I'm just having a look to see who has got himself into the group. Marcel Kittel riding up there in the middle of the screen in the black and white jersey. Tough day for him, but you know what? He'll come back and fight another day.
Can't win them all. As he crosses the line, he doesn't care how far back he is if he's not in first place. Just under a minute there for him as the peloton comes in. Now, Paul, to me, we're going to see a classic Tour de France this year. Now, and I don't say this in a kind way at all, but now that Chris Froome has gone, everybody's direction is going to change.
Well, we had a little bit of a technical problem on the run-in towards the finish. There were no helicopter shots there because, of course, the weather conditions kept the helicopter out, but we couldn't make any mistake of the man who gets the victory, André Greipel, champion of Germany.
Okay. Faut y aller. Oui, oui. Jamais lui dire ça. André, we go? I'm so happy. I got you. No problem, man. You deserve it. There we go.
Well, have a look at that, Phil. At this moment, he knew he got it. Nobody was going to challenge him. Nice to see Mark Renshaw very close there behind, but you know, at the end of the day, this is the man in Australia who's earned himself the nickname the Gorilla. He started off this year at the Santos Tour Down Under with 2 stage victories, but again, since 2011, he hasn't come to the Tour de France and gone away without a victory.
Yes, and he's only ever won in France, and so he's very happy to be back on French soil today. André Greipel.
Well, time to recuperate a fraction, but again, I think as Greg Henderson will probably be very happy watching this with delight, as he said, and the teammates all said it was all about keeping safe around those roundabouts on the running towards the finish. Christophe up there, Samy Dumoulin in the top 3 or 4 as well, as Mark Renshaw crossed the line, I think just about in 4th place. Peter Sagan in the mix once more, getting himself a few more points, but how unfortunate that was for the man who had a flat tyre on the running down towards the finishing line, because just inside the final few kilometres, Marcel Kittel and Danny Van Poppel, the 2 sprinters from Trek Factory Racing, and of course from Giant Shimano, had flat tyres. Confirmation coming through then, it was Greipel ahead of Christophe, Dumoulin, Mark Renshaw and Peter Sagan.
Christophe had a 2nd place a couple of days ago, got another one now. Dumoulin in 3rd and Mark Renshaw in 4th place when his teammate tried to steal the show, and he almost did.